All right, so are you ready to dive into some serious communication skills today?
I am definitely ready.
Because we're talking about how to talk to someone who is acting like a total tyrant.
That's fun.
Yeah. So to unpack all this, we're going to a source you might not expect.
Okay.
The Quran.
Really?
Yeah. Specifically the story of Moses and Pharaoh.
Oh, wow. That's a classic standoff, right?
It is.
You have a power-mad dictator on one side and a prophet on the other.
Right.
Trying to free his people.
Yeah. And it's interesting because this isn't just an ancient power struggle.
Right.
It's like a master class in navigating any conversation.
Yeah.
Where the stakes are high and the other person is maybe not receptive to your point of view.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so for those who haven't revisited this story lately,
Okay.
let's set the scene.
All right.
We're talking ancient Egypt.
Okay.
The Israelites were enslaved.
Right.
And Pharaoh is, to put it mildly,
Yeah.
not a nice guy.
Not a nice guy at all.
He's even ordering the deaths of baby boys.
A very brutal situation.
Yeah.
And into this walks Moses,
Yeah.
tasked by God with confronting Pharaoh.
Right.
And demanding the Israelites' freedom.
Okay, but here's the twist that makes this story so relevant
Okay.
to us today.
Right.
God tells Moses to speak to Pharaoh mildly.
Mildly.
Yeah, mildly.
To a guy who's basically committing genocide.
I know it seems a little counterintuitive.
Right, you would think.
Yeah.
Shouldn't Moses march in there?
Yeah, staff blazing.
Have staff blazing, lay down the law.
Yeah.
But that's not what happens.
Right.
And that's precisely why this story is so valuable.
I see.
It challenges our assumptions
Okay.
about how to deal with difficult people.
Okay.
The Quran is saying, even when you're facing down a pharaoh,
Yeah?
keeping your cool is a powerful strategy.
Okay, but let's be real for a second.
Sure.
I'm sure even Moses had his moments
Oh, absolutely.
where he just wanted to unleash some righteous fury.
Oh, for sure. And the text acknowledges that.
Does it?
Yeah, Moses and his brother Aaron.
They're terrified of Pharaoh.
Right.
They express their doubt to God.
What do they say?
They say, our hearts are filled with fear,
Wow.
that he may hasten to do evil to us.
So they're not superhuman.
They're relatable.
Yeah. They're just like us.
Exactly.
So even prophets get scared.
They do.
That's strangely comforting.
Yeah?
But it still leaves the question of how to actually talk to someone like Pharaoh.
Yeah.
Did Moses just politely request that he free the Israelites?
Well, not quite.
Yeah, okay.
This is where we have to go deeper into the actual dialogue.
Okay, so they go to Pharaoh.
They go to Pharaoh, and right away, his arrogance is on full display.
What does he say?
He's like, who is this Lord you keep talking about?
Oh my gosh.
I'm the top dog here.
Yeah, so Moses doesn't take the bait.
He doesn't take the bait. He responds calmly and says,
What does he say?
our Lord is he who gave to each thing its form and nature, then guided it aright.
Wow. Okay, so he's not engaging in a power struggle.
Right.
He's kind of sidestepping Pharaoh's ego. Yeah.
By appealing to this bigger idea.
Exactly.
His higher authority.
A brilliant tactic.
It is.
Because it shifts the conversation away from Pharaoh's little kingdom.
I see.
And forces him to at least acknowledge the possibility of something bigger.
Yeah. It's like Moses is saying, look, dude, you might think you're the big cheese here.
Yes.
But there's a whole universe out there and you're just a tiny part of it.
Yes. And this approach is actually more effective than it might seem at first.
Really?
Because Pharaoh can't just dismiss Moses so easily.
Right.
He has to grapple with this idea, even if he ultimately rejects it.
Okay. I'm starting to see why this ancient story is so relevant today.
Me too.
It's like we all have our own pharaohs.
We do.
Those bosses' relatives or internet trolls who just seem determined to be difficult.
You got it.
Yeah.
But instead of meeting their aggression with aggression, the story of Moses suggests a different path.
What's that?
Stay calm, appeal to shared values, and keep your focus on the bigger picture.
Okay, but doesn't that feel like letting the pharaoh win?
That's a great question.
I mean, how do you stand up for what's right without getting sucked into their drama?
That's a great question, and one that leads us to another crucial part of the story.
Okay.
Because even though Moses speaks mildly, he doesn't back down from his core message.
So he still stands up to Pharaoh.
He does. He firmly reiterates the demand to free the Israelites.
What does he say?
He says, let the children of Israel go with me.
Wow, no sugarcoating there.
No sugarcoating.
So it's like he has this steel spine of conviction.
Yes.
He's wrapping it in diplomacy.
Exactly.
I'm really curious to see how this plays out.
Me too.
And more importantly, how we can apply it to our own lives.
Absolutely. Let's dig into that in part 2.
Okay.
Where we'll look at how Moses handles Pharaoh's resistance.
Sounds good.
And what lessons we can take from that.
All right, looking forward to it. So we left off with Moses demanding Pharaoh free the Israelites.
We did.
But I have a feeling Pharaoh didn't just roll over.
No, not quite. Pharaoh basically laughs in his face.
Oh, boy.
And this is where it gets really interesting because Moses is facing what we all fear in a tough conversation.
What's that?
The other side just doesn't budge.
Yeah, see, this is what I always struggle with. It's easy to talk about staying calm.
Right.
But what do you do when you're dealing with someone who's basically a brick wall of stubbornness?
It's a valid point, and the story doesn't shy away from that.
Okay, good.
Pharaoh throws every tactic back at Moses.
Really?
Mocks him, threatens him, even tries to bribe him with worldly power.
Oh, wow. So the temptation there
to
either fight fire with fire or just give up.
It gets really strong.
Yeah, it would be really tempting.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I'd probably be tempted to pull out my own divine plagues.
Right.
But Moses doesn't do that.
He doesn't.
So how does he handle it?
Well, one example that stands out
is
in Surah 7, verse 103.
Okay.
Pharaoh throws down the gauntlet.
Oh, boy.
Challenging Moses to a magical duel.
Oh, my gosh. What does he say?
He's basically like, if you're so powerful, let's see what you got.
Oh, wow.
Now, most of us, we'd either get defensive or try to one-up the guy.
Totally. I'd be like, all right, let me show you what I can do.
Right, exactly. But Moses, he does the opposite.
Really?
He lets Pharaoh go first.
He does.
It says Moses said, nay, you throw down first.
Wow, that's so counterintuitive.
I know, right?
Yeah.
By not engaging in a power struggle on Pharaoh's terms,
Okay.
Moses throws him off balance.
That's interesting.
And what's more, the text describes how Moses actually prays for guidance before the showdown.
Oh, wow.
Showing he's not relying on ego or one-upmanship, but on something greater.
So there's this incredible humility alongside his conviction.
Yes.
He's standing firm on his message.
Yeah.
But he's also trusting in a process that's bigger than his own ego.
Exactly.
But let's be honest, Pharaoh still came back swinging.
He did. He sure did. The back and forth goes on.
Oh, my God.
Pharaoh throws plagues of his own, literally trying to mimic God's power.
So what does Moses do?
But Moses again and again comes back to that core message.
Which is?
Freedom for the Israelites.
Okay.
He's like a broken record.
Yeah.
But one that's powered by a divine mandate.
Okay.
Not by a need to win the argument.
This all raises a tough question for us today.
Okay.
If even Moses, with God literally on his side, couldn't change Pharaoh's heart,
right?
What hope do we have?
That's where the story takes a turn that's both profound and I think really liberating.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Because ultimately, Moses and the Israelites do leave Egypt.
They do.
But not through convincing Pharaoh.
Right.
It takes a series of divine interventions, those famous plagues,
right,
culminating in their escape across the Red Sea.
Wow. So the takeaway isn't that we can always change someone like Pharaoh.
Right.
But that our responsibility is to hold firm to what's right.
Yes.
Even when it feels impossible.
Exactly. And that brings us to a crucial question for our listeners. When we're stuck in a Pharaoh situation, how do we know when to keep engaging?
Right.
And when it's time for what you might call a strategic retreat.
Okay, strategic retreat sounds a lot better than giving up.
Yeah.
But seriously, that line is so hard to find.
It is.
Any tips from the Moses playbook on how to navigate that?
Well, throughout his ordeal, Moses doesn't rely on himself alone.
Okay.
He constantly turns to God for guidance and reassurance.
So it's not just about what we say to the Pharaoh,
right?
But about where we're getting our own support and perspective from.
Exactly. It takes the pressure off needing to be perfect in the moment.
I love that.
And think about it. Moses had an entire community, the Israelites,
right,
who were relying on him.
Yeah.
That sense of purpose, of fighting for something bigger than himself, that's got to be a huge part of his resilience.
It's like you can't draw water from an empty well.
Right.
If you're going to face down a Pharaoh, you better have your own well of strength filled up.
And that brings us to the final part of the story. Okay.
Where we see how focusing on that bigger picture, even when things are tough, can lead to unexpected victories.
So we've talked about staying calm, appealing to those higher principles, even when to make that strategic retreat from a Pharaoh situation. But let's be honest. Sometimes it feels like even with the best strategy, you're just banging your head against a wall.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Did Moses ever feel that way?
Oh, absolutely. Remember this whole ordeal with Pharaoh?
Yeah.
It went on for years.
Years.
Years of plays, negotiations, setbacks.
Oh, wow.
It would be superhuman to not feel frustrated at times.
That's true.
But that's where the final and maybe most powerful lesson of the story comes in.
Okay, I love a good grand finale lesson.
I know, right?
So lay it on us. What's the secret sauce?
It's this, even if you can't change the Pharaoh in your life,
okay,
the process itself can change you.
Okay. That sounds kind of deep.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, think about Moses. Okay. This wasn't just about getting the Israelites out of Egypt.
Right.
It was about his growth, too.
Really?
Yeah. God even tells him this directly.
What does he say?
Saying that the purpose of speaking mildly to Pharaoh is partly that we may rehearse our signs unto him.
So it's like divine training.
It is like divine training.
Dealing with Pharaoh was actually part of Moses' development as a prophet.
It was.
That's a wild thought.
It is, and it kind of flips the script for us, right? Suddenly, those frustrating conversations, they're not just about winning or losing.
Right.
They're opportunities to practice patience, resilience, even compassion.
Hold on. Compassion for a tyrant.
I know it sounds crazy, but hear me out.
Okay.
It's not about condoning their actions.
Right.
But about understanding that even the worst Pharaoh is still a human being trapped in their own patterns of ego and fear.
Yeah, that's true.
And seeing that without losing your own center, that's powerful.
Okay, I'm starting to get it.
It's like by not getting sucked into their drama, you create space for yourself to grow in ways they can't.
Precisely. And that can lead to unexpected outcomes.
Okay.
Remember, Pharaoh wasn't the only one who was changed by this encounter.
Right, the Israelites.
The Israelites went from being enslaved to becoming a nation.
Wow.
They learned to trust God, to follow Moses, to have faith, even in the face of impossible odds.
And that transformation wouldn't have happened without going through the fire.
Exactly. And I think that's the ultimate message here.
What's that?
Difficult conversations, even if they don't end the way we want, they can still be catalysts for growth for ourselves and those around us.
It's amazing we started with what seemed like a pretty simple story.
I know.
And now we're talking about personal transformation and building resilience.
That's the magic of these deep dives.
It is. You really find those hidden gems.
Exactly. And like those gems, these insights are valuable, but they require effort to polish and put into practice.
So for our listeners out there who are ready to take on their own pharaohs, what's the one thing you'd advise them to remember?
Go back to that image of Moses praying before confronting Pharaoh. Remember, it's not about winning the argument. It's about aligning yourself with something bigger than the conflict itself.
That's where true strength comes from.
Oh, I think so.
Beautifully said. Yeah. And as we wrap up, here's a challenge for everyone listening. Think of one Pharaoh situation in your life.
Right.
Now imagine approaching it not with the goal of changing them, but of using it as an opportunity to strengthen yourself.
Interesting.
How does that shift your perspective?
Yeah, that's something to think about.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Okay.
But the conversation doesn't have to end here.
Right.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the wisdom that surrounds us.
I like it.
Until next time.